Hey, so it's been 8 days. I think I'm wearing different clothes. Been 8 days since the last part of the video before this because I had to go back to work. I work an 8 and 6 shift, so I worked 8 days on, and now I get 6 days off. So let's have a quick look at what we're going to do today. Okay, so in order to run this power wire down through the loom, if you will call it, the plastic housing bezel that we're going to get to that plug connection there and to the other side where the fuse box is in order to tie in the positive and negative. And that, of course, is that switch power we talked about from the accessory switch right there. So I've come to the realization that all this is going to have to come off. I might be able to take the screws out and pop the corners up and get in there with the wires. It doesn't look too bad, but if not, there is a trick on getting your ignition switch out. So we'll go through that if we have to. And this is the only wire that's going to go down the bar. Now, I think I said before I would like to run it inside the handlebars. That is way more difficult than it actually looks. However, being as this is an 07 and still a cable throttle bike, I decided that since it's not fly-by-wire and you still have the outside cables and stuff, running one single wire down this bar into the instrument cluster is not going to be aesthetically ugly. So we'll put it on the underside anyway, but anyhow, let's see what we have to do. One quick thing before I do is I decided to put my bike on my lift just because I am getting a little older and it's a much nicer height to work at. I don't have to bend over as far. You have the tools, might as well use it. All right, so some of you might find this funny. I did not. And what I did was I put my ignition back in because, so what my plan was to run it across this panel and then down underneath the panel and onto travel down the wire loom, the wire harness. And what I didn't think about was how to get the kink right so that when you're turning, you want to make sure that you're not binding any of your wires in here because they have to go in this loom out of your fairing. Then I stepped back for a minute because my phone rang. And it was a call that I had to take. I pulled all that wiring back out and not even thinking that my bat wing is off. All I did was come straight in, follow the handlebar like I always plan to, like you have to, right? Goes down your handlebar. And instead of worrying about the kink, bring it up across and connect it to the wiring and follow it back down. Now it follows the motion of all the rest of the wiring harnesses on the bike. So, needless to say, I had a level 7 tantrum, went in the house, had a glass of water, and now I'll come back and do it all again. All right, now that the level 7 tantrum is over, I used white zip ties because the black ones are in short supply and no one can see under here anyway. So follow the handlebar up, come across here. It goes with these wires. I didn't want to attach it to the actual antenna for the radio. And I have heard that they can cause interference if you do. So I just went around on the inside and connected it to the main harness. So now you can see full range of motion. It doesn't pull on the wiring at all. And back in the harness for the third time, in with the wiring harness. I got really good at taking this apart. It is stubborn. These little clips are strong. So, and then you have an absolute ton of wiring left. It only needs to go right there to the fuse box. So they give you more than enough to run it properly. So, which I have done now, and I can again be happy and smash out some tunes and finish this off. Now we're on to what I consider the fun stuff. I like doing electrical. So this is just a handy little tool that I picked up somewhere really cheap. You get all kinds of adjustments on here. It swivels around. There's 2 little sets of jaws that hang onto stuff. And I'll tell you what, for soldering, it's fantastic. And you can see here, I've got this little red piece right here. This is actually slid way up in here. It's shrink tubing. And the reason I'm doing this is please don't use butt connectors. Butt connectors are not only amateur, they'll give you grief because they will corrode. So what we're going to do is we made the connection here between the wiring from the grips and the wiring that goes to this plug that comes with, that connects to the bike. And we're going to solder this, and then we're going to shrink tube it, and it's going to last forever. Okay, so I apologize. Everything's chrome around here. It makes all this a little convoluted, but get your gun really good and hot. Get underneath the wire and stay there. And I use electronics grade solder always when I'm wiring on vehicles. And then you're just going to want to not get the solder on the tip because you don't want it to just melt and blob on there. You want it to flow into the copper of the wire. So you can just go ahead and let that sit on there for a couple minutes right through it. And it's starting to do that now. Here we go. So you're going to feed about 1 inch into one that size. Give it a second and just take your gun away. You see, we never even touched the tip. I made it funny. Okay, so we slid the shrink tube out. Now I use my little torchy. Come on. Oh, and this is, I'll just calm this down. And this is what we will use to shrink the shrink tube. And make sure you don't stay in one place too long, because then you just melt a hole in it. And you get angry because you got to cut all this apart and start over again. So we just want to warm it up. It really doesn't take a lot of heat to shrink wrap. Shrink wrap? I guess it's not really shrink wrap. Shrink tubing. So nice tight. Yep, we're nice and tight on that end. See, nice and tight. No gaps on this end. And even though my camera won't focus. Anyways, that is complete. And to top it off, there's the plug in the end. I do a nice wrap of electrical tape. And I go, about 1 inch up the plastic on each side. You want to make that a nice connection. It doesn't really serve any good purpose other than just makes it more durable from vibration and stuff, because it's going to get stuffed down in there where the other wires are behind the battery, or I guess it's in front of the battery, depending on how you want to look at it. And you want it to be abrasion resistant and vibration resistant. So it just makes the job that much nicer. If it was something more exposed, I would put actual plastic loom over top of that, but I have no need to. So nice and tight, use a knife, cut your ends square, and make sure it's nice, beautiful, tight wrap like that. No messy. So after yesterday's level 7 tantrum, I decided it was time to call it a day and do something else. Hey, and if you don't have a set of these kind of strippers, you are missing out, because these are fantastic. You stick any gauge wire in there, it auto adjusts. Blue Point, a little pricey, but if you do any amount of electrical, it's sure awesome. So anyways, after I spent an inordinate amount of time in the wrong fuse box, because again, the instructions are pretty sketchy as to where you get your power, I ended up having to switch over to this side, take my engine control module off, and get to this little fuel box, because it actually has the P&A in both fuse boxes, and it shows both in the instruction manual. However, it says that there will be a bus bar, and there is not. This one, however, that's the top fuse, does have an active bus bar and power connection. So this is the one I'm going to use, and I will just get to soldering this wire up now to the remaining last red wire, orange and white wire actually, on the heated grips themselves, and then we will be ready to plug it in and test it out. And before I forget, this is only a 2 amp fuse that goes in here, so here's a better shot of what we did. But you can see this shiny black one, that's the one we put in, and the clip goes in here. This is already an accessory ignition wire. Only comes on with the ignition, so we plug our in there and put our 2 amp fuse in there, which is provided in the kit, as are these little ring joints for your ground and stuff. Alrighty, now that we've got the computer back on, we've tied up the wires, we've got them all soldered and shrink wrapped, and tied up some other wires. The Harley likes to leave stuff laying around, so I'm not a big fan of that. So I'll clean it up a little better, all done on this side. Now let's put the ground on. All right, so if we come down from the front of the bike, and if we look right in there, you'll see that Harley is kind enough to provide us with a ground lug. So let's attach to that. And again, just because I'm a fussy prick, I used black shrink tube. It gets us to focus, there we go. Went all the way up to the metal, so everything is shrink wrapped and sealed, even the ground, because even grounds can give you grief. Okay, a bit of a pro tip. Before I stick the nut back on there, you'll see on this one right here, that's the ground wire that we're using. And this is the factory bike wire. And you'll notice I put it underneath the factory ground wire. And that's because when you twist that nut on, what does it want to do? It wants to twist. So why take a really small gauge wire and put it on top and have it twist around and give you grief and possibly break? Plus, as you can see, the factory wires have the teeth on them that help the nut stay on. All right, well, that's been a lot of work. And now let's just take a quick break, and just like that, basically you got a bike again. Oh, look at that. Sure nice to see that back together. It does get a little distressing when you have that much of your bike apart. Anyways, let's see how good these grips are. Raytech, laser. And we'll see what the ambient temperature in here is. We'll shoot these grips. So basically 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's turn them on to midway, let's say 3. And there we have it set on 3. And we'll just give that a couple minutes to warm up. Okay, it's been about, oh, here we go. Look at that. In just a few seconds, we're already at 80 degrees-ish. So it's about 80 degrees in the first 30, 40 seconds. While I'm waiting, you can see, so my battery's fully charged and it's pulled down to just over 11 volts. These things definitely pull power with the bike not running, so you definitely, good thing it's ignition controlled. So let's see, we're at about 3 minutes here now. Yeah, we're just kissing 100 degrees in about 3 minutes, 101 degrees. That's it. So we seem to have tapered off at about 112 degrees here. Moving around lots on the handle grip to see where it's got hot spots or anything. This is my old racing gun. It's been dropped a lot of times, so it's a little delicate. But yeah, 111, 112 degrees. Seems to have leveled off there at 3. So I'll tell you what. Oh, man, that is wonderful. I can't wait to try this out in some cold weather. Well, it looks like the old infrared gun finally bought it. So I didn't get to take the temperature, but so it's been a couple of minutes. Oops, sorry about that, on my highest setting. And I'll tell you what, that's really warm. That's almost too warm, you know, with bare hands. So my guess is that these are going to be well warm enough for any riding we can do up here before the snow flies. So that's it for me for, well, today and the last 2 weeks. I, between work and stuff, just pick away at it, but the bike's basically back together. I've left apart what I need to have apart yet, because I've got some other stuff coming from a great company down in the States. If it ever gets here, mail is not the quickest these days. And I left my saddlebags off because I still have to do brakes, and I might do my clutch. I haven't decided. I don't have problems with it, but there's quite a bit of miles on it. So looking at some different clutches available. So might do that. Might do my primary tensioner. And I need to do an oil change and the primary and the engine. And I did my transmission in the fall, so I don't need to do that. So anyways, sorry it's a little bit long, but it just the Reader's Digest version of basically what it's like to put heated grips, Harley Davidson heated grips, on your Harley Davidson Ultra Classic. So it wasn't really meant to be a how-to. It's pretty complicated, and the video would be really long. And I don't mean complicated and that's above most people. It's certainly not, but the instructions in Harley Davidson don't make it easy for you, just so that you'll probably take it to the dealer. But there wasn't a chance that I was going to pay $500 to have the dealers do what I can do. So anyways, thanks for watching. Take care. Enjoy my COVID hair, because we can't get a haircut up here right now. I'll see you next time.